recently, he's taken the helm at Johnson&Johnson as the head of Johnson&Johnson Innovation. So Johnson&Johnson has many innovation centers all throughout the world, as well as a venture arm. So, you know, in working with corporations, I work with many, and everyone is kind of at a different stage of how they engage with innovative startups, with external technology vendors, and Johnson&Johnson is definitely at the forefront. They've got a lot of muscle to flex, you know, when working with startups. So again, we're thrilled to have them. So please help me welcome Ken Drazan, head of Johnson&Johnson Innovation.
Thank you, Candace and Saeed. This is a great pleasure for me to be here and meet all of you. Obviously, we're not going to get a chance to meet today, but I'm going to become a regular habitant of the Plug and Play Center here, and I hope all of you will be too. And I hope that some of my slides will help you understand what our strategy is at J&J and where we endeavor to go and what we view as must-haves in order to be successful, almost table stakes to be successful on an industrial basis globally. So, you know, the title of my presentation is very sincere. We're doing this work on behalf of all of us, not just as professionals, but most of the work we're trying to do here is really on behalf of living a better life for our families, our friends, and our countrymen. So take it to heart that that's really our ambition, and J&J is very sincere and serious about this activity. We are the largest healthcare company in the world. By market cap, we're one of the top 5 companies as a listed entity, and we do this by being a significant player in 3 major markets. We're a significant market leader in medical devices and diagnostics. In fact, we're probably the largest surgical products company in the world. Our materials and products can be found in every operating room in the world, and I say that with almost great confidence. And I will tell you that when I was a training surgeon and as a practicing surgeon, I loved using Johnson&Johnson products. That's not a pitch for the company, but it was because they made this one very special fine suture, and it's called 10-0 Prolene. It's like a human hair with a curved needle on the end of it. And I use this suture to sew together very small arteries, 1 millimeter in diameter in infants. And you couldn't do the operation without a perfect product every time. And little did I know that, you know, it took a company of this scale to deliver that product every single day in every operating room around the world. And understanding that scale is the problem that we all face as business partners here. How do you deliver at scale and meet your customers' needs? We're also one of the top 5 largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, and this is a very interesting industry to think about for many reasons. One is it probably touches all of our lives today, if not our family members. But it's also an industry that's had to undergo really significant restructuring, self-inflicted over the last 2 decades. Namely, this industry faces major patent cliffs every decade. And essentially, they have to wipe out their portfolio and start all over again. And they have to go about doing that not only by taking a look at what their customer needs, but they have to do that in the face of ever costly auctions to gain access to the best products in the world. And they do that also in combination with trying to compete near real time with regulatory changes in all of those markets, political changes in those markets, supply chain issues in those markets. It's a daunting task, and for many of you that run and participate in large businesses, you realize how challenging this can be. But I've gotten a look under the hood, and I'm impressed at how difficult this problem is to get your arms around on a regular basis. We're also one of the largest consumer product companies in the world, And many of you probably know we have some iconic brands like Neutrogena, Johnson's Baby. And some of those products are things that as parents or as our children have made use of are really emblematic of the rituals that we have in our families. And Johnson&Johnson plays a great role in that and actually feels very serious about how it plays that role. What drives our business strategy underneath all of this, though, is what you see up here. This is a company, and I've been at Johnson&Johnson now altogether about 8 months, and I'm already starting to feel the sentiment around this sincerely, is that it's really a company that's driven by wanting to do good, wanting to improve the overall well-being of its customers, their health, and their quality of life. And it drives decision-making all the time inside the company. I know you would probably shake your head and question whether that's really true, but I can promise you that it is true. And that we're constantly asking ourselves the question, are we doing the right thing? Yes, we want to return shareholder value. Yes, we want to grow top line. Yes, we want it to be accretive. But every day at Johnson&Johnson, the employees are constantly challenged to respond to the question, are we doing the right thing for our customers, and is their overall well-being being improved? And it's a very stimulating thing to be part of. It's very consistent with the way I've lived my life, starting off as a clinician. So it's turned out to be, so far, I'll let you know tomorrow, it's a comfortable place to be. So what is our challenge? It's fairly daunting. We have to grow $10 billion of new revenue every decade in order to meet our growth objectives. Top line, we're about a $70 billion company, and we've got about a $35 billion pharmaceutical business that's been growing at a very fast clip, in fact, the fastest in its industry. We've got a medical device industry with really significant share. Almost every product is product category we're number one or number two in, and have something like 50% market share, which is tough to grow further into. And we're constantly focused on identifying the most significant customer need, the most significant one, and trying to develop a product that will either reduce the suffering or enhance the outcome of the individual. And that's a tall order, because I'm sure for the breadth of you in this room, that's not what you think about every day when you think about bringing your products to the market. So how do we go about doing that? And why did we go about creating a methodology to do that? Because that has not been our strategy year over year for decades. It's really been one that's been refined over the last few years, and we're still in testing the experimental results of a really significant investment on our part. Just like you're testing the results of your initial investment here, we're knee-deep into it, and I'll tell you about how that experiment was crafted and what we're doing, and then I'll finish up with why we're here and partnering with all of you. So the first mandate that we had to address was we had to figure out how to take an industrial approach to globally sourcing innovation. Globally. It's because we're in almost every market in the world. We can't just hang out in Silicon Valley and Boston and hope for the best and apply those products in a culturally sensitive way globally. We can't do that. We have to have a global approach. So what would that approach be? When we got started, unfortunately, plug and play wasn't in all the markets we needed to go, so we had to figure out how to do it on our own. We also had to figure out how our methodology could be lined up with a continuous process of improvement. What would be the systems that we would use to monitor our progress, to track our interactions with people? Would we use old client software, or would we use new software as a service that could be used on everybody's phone? Every employee would have access to that information as need be. We'd find relevant CRM systems that will allow us to engage with our customers and our prospects, and we'd readily know who they are so that we wouldn't have 3 different people calling them at the same day with different messages. We have those problems just like you do. We also had to figure out, how do we stimulate our internal R&D at enough pace and with enough talent so that those people internally could help us understand the opportunities we're seeing externally, and they had to feel comfortable enough in their jobs that if they found something better outside the company, they'd be willing to give up that which they were working on, their bowl of rice, in preference of the opportunity that they found outside. That's a very altruistic mission for every employee in the company, or those that are participating in R&D, to have. And I'll tell you, the experiment isn't over, but we're making good progress. I'll show you some outcomes. Aside from finding the innovation, you have to figure out how you're going to pay for it. And that's both an accounting issue and a methodology issue. So you've heard probably in your experiences here, and many of you have either established or are thinking about establishing venture capital arms, where you set aside part of your balance sheet every year, and depending upon what kinds of companies you're investing in, that investment will either sit on your balance sheet or you'll have to expense it depending upon the accounting treatment. But you're going to set aside part of your precious earnings to invest in risky activities like that which Plug and Play is bringing forward to you. And you have to make the determination that it's better to invest in those activities than it is to give a Christmas bonus to your employees. Those are tough questions to pose. Johnson&Johnson decided 40 years ago to create a corporate venture capital arm, and we may have the second or third longest lasting venture capital arm, and we've been upping that activity almost every year now for a decade. And we've been doing it because we must be in the market to enable the ecosystem, just like this ecosystem, to flourish. Another major objective for us is that we have to constantly think about whether the sectors that are emerging, the activity, entrepreneurship that emerging, is worthy of us extending our business model even further to the fringes of our core business, either because it can become, in the near term, accretive, or over the long term, disruptive. And so we also have to set aside part of our balance sheet activities for disruption. And I think a lot of what I expect to have come through here will be mostly disruptive to the business practices that we generally see at J&J, which I'm excited about because it's in my own backyard and it's consistent with what I think we have to do. So how have we done it? Well, it started with a decision several years back that our internal R&D return on investment dollars was inadequate, i.e. our pipeline wasn't growing fast enough, that wasn't converting into revenue fast enough, and our market share, our shelf space, our percentage ownership of your time taking our products to better your health was declining. And we had to do something fast and radical to address it. At the same time, our patent portfolio was eclipsing. And we needed to acquire new methods of developing technology that we could protect and deliver into the marketplace. And so the approach was to model the experience that happened with one of our employees. Johnson&Johnson, about 12 years ago, acquired a company called Janssen, which was one of the largest pharmaceutical companies, independent pharmaceutical companies in Europe, this based in Belgium, named after Paul Janssen, who discovered a variety of different medications. And Dr. Janssen hired a young Belgian infectious disease doctor who was working in the Belgian Congo during the HIV crisis, who came home because of the political unrest back to Belgium. And he was so impressed by this young doctor's boldness and intellect that he hired him, and he put him in charge of their, at that time, antiviral drug discovery program. And he rapidly helped the company identify several new drug candidates. Not long after that, Janssen was acquired by J&J and became the nucleus of our growing pharmaceutical business now 12 years ago. Well, this gentleman, Dr. Stoffels, under the new ownership, his capabilities were expanded and he rapidly took off in his impact in the company. And within 2 years, he decided that he was ready to leave. He wanted to form a new drug discovery company. And J&J thought that, nah, he's not that important. But maybe we'll give him a little bit of money as just sort of a tail on what might happen. Well, within 5 years, he turned that into a $1 billion company that J&J decided it had to have back. And it did, and he became the wealthiest man in Belgium and bought himself a castle with a moat around it. Does anybody here have a moat around their house? I doubt it. Or you wouldn't be here. Maybe today, yeah. But it'll go away tomorrow. His is going to stay. And subsequently, he kept rising in the company, and today he's the chief scientific officer. He's a member of the executive committee of the company, and his take on the crisis at J&J around intellectual property was that we had to externally innovate. We had to go where the best science was, the best technology was, where the best talent was, and we needed to go embed ourselves culturally into those communities and create a presence and be more flexible about how we worked with entrepreneurs. And that would catalyze both our pipeline, but also catalyze the attitude of our employees internally. And so that was the beginning of this mission now a couple years ago. Where are we today? So we formed what are called the Johnson&Johnson Innovation Centers, which are, call them business development outposts, nowhere near as massive as this, but each one is, I don't know, roughly about 2,000 square meters. One's located in Menlo Park, just north of here, one in Kendall Square in Cambridge, Boston, one in London, which is to cover Europe, and one just recently put together outside of Pudong in Shanghai. Each one is staffed with between 30 to 40 people of very experienced attorneys, engineers, scientists, business professionals, deal jockeys, people that are typically from the community that they're being recruited into. So they tend to have their own networks, which is very important as you come to get to know Plug and Play, because the network is a huge part of the value you're going to have here. And people who also had non-traditional backgrounds, present company included, where you bring a variety of life experiences that make you open to the kind of deal making that you need to make on the fly to incent an entrepreneur to come work with you. And I can't underscore how important that is. The next thing that we did is that we started to address what I call market failures in these tech centers, which are, at least today, there are a variety of market failures affecting even the rising boat here in Silicon Valley. Number one is there's not enough early stage venture capital in the life science sector. So we expanded our venture capital commitment to medical devices and biopharmaceuticals. We also expanded our internal knowledge base and capabilities in information sciences, cloud computing, UI, UX, and a variety of those things that we take for granted but are embedded in the great products that our customers like today. And there's several areas we've not invested in when we're clearly behind, and that's one of the reasons why we're here in this partnership and very grateful to be here. So one of the market failures we identified that Plug and Play is solving for us, but in a different sector, is there's not enough incubation facilities to get entrepreneurs quickly into an environment where they can mature their business thinking and accelerate their early product development activity. And it's obviously very different in the life sciences where you need wet bench capability, a lot of capital equipment versus a coffee machine and a Wi-Fi router. But we recognize that it's important for us to help create these systems so that it will attract more entrepreneurs to them. And in many cases, we do it with no strings attached. So you can come work in our incubator. There's a monthly fee. It's only month to month. You can walk out after 2 months. You can get a quarter of a bench. You can order off of our purchasing power. You can have coffee out of our coffee machine. And you can hang around all the people in our office as well as the other entrepreneurs around yours. And that connectivity, as all of you know, by virtue of the fact that you're here, is valuable. And we've put those together in San Diego, San Francisco, Boston. In one case, we've created a novel structure for one in Tel Aviv. And you'll be reading and hearing about other ones that are coming online early next year and at the end of 2015, where we're going to go global with this. The other thing that's important is that these companies that come in, we have to have very special documentation that allows them to protect their intellectual property. We have to constantly enable them to meet venture capitalists so that capital formation can occur in their companies, not necessarily our dollars, but the attraction of venture capital will help build the ecosystem, and we feel an obligation to help grow it. And of course, somewhat selfishly, our venture capital arm will be there alongside it if a deal needs to get cut. This is just a map of where these centers are, and I'll tell you that even though these are already in place, operational, we've met with over 2,000 companies in 2 years. We've got over 28,000 new contacts in our database, and we spam the hell out of them, as much as we possibly can. So I'm hacking into Candace's Rolodex right now so I can add all of you to that spamming activity. And this just is a map that shows where we are and what we're doing. Everybody that we recruit has great teeth and great hair, except for me. But it really comes down to people, and we have great people, and I'm sure you do too, but never compromise on your talent. Or you'll compromise on your business success. The formula for success for us is a moving bar, as it may be for many of you. In the field of healthcare and delivering products, devices, pharmaceuticals, or over-the-counter products, the trends of consumerization are driving greater and greater performance criteria for us. Our products have to be better tolerated, they have to be greener, they have to be of better design and form factor, they have to communicate a life experience. All of these requirements are rising, in today's developed markets, but they're also rising in the developing markets, perhaps at a faster pace. And the opportunity for us to deliver these great products really depends upon where we want to point our gun. If you want the biggest bang for your product, the highest gross margin, it may not be in the mass market. If you want to have the longest impact on your business, it may not be in the mass market, it may be in a niche. And I'm sure that you're segmenting your markets, and this is something that we're doing constantly. Of course, we're under a constant regulatory overview that creates great resistance for us sometimes in the pace at which we want to develop our products, but it's something that's an ongoing business risk for us that we have to accept. So there are a variety of different models that you as corporate partners will have to consider, and most often the ones that you think about most are, you think about expense sharing. And I just want to underscore the great value of venture capital and using your balance sheet to stimulate the opportunities that you can with entrepreneurs. And if you don't have a venture capital arm, you ought to think about setting aside dollars to create one. And it doesn't take a lot because it starts off with a cultural approach to how you're going to incent entrepreneurs to succeed. And that's by being partners on the balance sheet with them. It's a very powerful instrument. It's very common here in the Valley, but I hope you'll take it home with you and think about it seriously. And we think about how to do that, how to share capital with risk takers along a continuum, just like you do. At the far end of that continuum it's an M&A transaction. But what you'll find at the far left in this diagram, on your left, is there are a whole bunch of steps, lots of little steps, ways that you can segment the way you partner with entrepreneurs and emerging companies where you don't have to take as much risk. You might have a different accounting treatment of it, but it doesn't take a lot of dollars to incent these entrepreneurs to do some bold things for you. And I would really encourage you to think about that process carefully and come up with your own constructs. And to the extent we have time to hang out together here over the ensuing years that we're going to be collaborating together, happy to share with you, and my colleagues will be here. I'm sure they'll be happy to share with you of how we're going about thinking about this. And again, I would remind you, this is a continuous process of improvement. We definitely don't have the complete formula. Otherwise, our market cap would be rising hourly, but it's not. So we have to keep working at this to make it better. Sorry. I want to leave this last slide with you. I'm sure it's intuitive to all of you, but when I show it to executives at J&J, they look at me like I'm out of my mind. These are the iconic trends that are affecting all of us, and they're only accelerating. Product release cycles are accelerating all the time. And most of us think about that in terms of software, how easy it is to get a release out. But it's also happening in hardware. And if I'm not mistaken, Lior Susan's Lab 9 group might be here today. And I know that that's a very important business concept that they think about investing into. But it's affecting all of us that have release cycles that are slower. Customer insights, while Yelp may be only one example, customer insights are accelerating, becoming universal, and really penetrating the productization of our industries. And we have to be attuned to this. In some ways, the glass is going to feel half empty because it's a tough pill to swallow. But at the same time, let's think about it as continuous guidance. It's a GPS system that will help us all, and I know that this is a part of the accelerator here that I'm also interested in learning more about. The next trend that's just remarkable to me is, and we heard about it yesterday, and I'm forgetting the gentleman's name from Tesco, who gave the analogy when he signed up for Amazon. We were talking about food yesterday, how his expectations were, I'll go to the market maybe once or twice a week. Then now I expect I can get food, the same day. And no, now I want it within 2 hours. And when I was at the office before I came down here, someone said to me, let's just call TaskRabbit. We'll get a cup of coffee in 30 minutes. People's expectations are just continuously rising when they leave the office about customer service. And Amazon is really, among many, are really pushing us. And while not all of us are in the consumable goods, perishable goods business, it still pushes every industry to think about heightening their customer service approach. And then lastly, but I think most importantly of all, my next door neighbor is the CEO of LinkedIn, and that guy is killing everybody's business in some ways, I think. But at the same time, it's enabling all of us. LinkedIn has created the iconic value to every single professional. Everyone thinks they're a rock star, and they should be because they've got a spot on LinkedIn and everybody wants to like them. So it's both a pressure and value on managing your talent. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you so much. You were not here today, but sort of you said it was a special day for Plug and Play because Lending Club went public, and it was sort of like our first IPO, and it went up 63% on the first day. So it was really exciting, but I think just as exciting is the relationship we have with J&J and with you personally. And we would love to announce that we are looking for startups that are in connected health, personal documentation, personal digital records. And together with J&J, we would love to choose 20, 30 companies early next year would join the accelerator. Can you say a little bit what do you expect from this relationship? And again, I'm not exaggerating when I say I really value our relationship with J&J as, big accomplishment for Plug and Play.
Yep. Thanks, Saeed. I will be very transparent. I don't think I know exactly what the archetype of the company that we're ready to say we're ready for all of you. Come right now. We're going to do some massaging around this. It's going to be a digital set of opportunities, and it's certainly going to be across a spectrum of. We have customers who we're being disrupted against all the time by retail. We have patients who need our products, have a disease burden, and we'd like to find a way to know them, learn what their needs are, and then ultimately design our products that better suit their needs. And then we also want to know what happens after they take our products. What's their experience? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it sideways? How do they become more compliant? We are headed into a world of healthcare deployment where, unlike in, let's say, the consumer industry, where you pay all up front for the product and you get all the value you think you deserve after you've paid for it, to one in healthcare where we may get paid partially for our product and then wait for the outcome and then get a reward or a contingent payment scaled based on that outcome. There are certain regulatory bodies in the world that believe that's the most appropriate method of payment, reimbursement, compensation, consideration for healthcare companies with products that are not perfectly attuned to their customers. That's a huge challenge for us because we can't tailor-made every single product for every person. So this is an opportunity for us to use digital technologies to help learn about our customers before they become paying customers, gain more insights into them, have traction around them, and in some case play defense and offense because some of our retail partners' interests are not perfectly aligned with ours. That's code for sometimes you might want to swap our product out for a white-labeled one that's higher gross margin for you. We need to play in that field, and we will. And this is just one of those avenues that we can gain some traction, some knowledge, ultimately talent, and then accrue some assets onto the balance sheet. So that's what I hope will happen here.
Thank you so much. So next up, we have a panel about the Internet of Things and how that's going to affect business moving forward. So I'll introduce the moderator.